My name is Dovie Anderson, and I'm 71 years old. For 50 years, I worked alongside my late husband to build a multi-million-dollar family business from nothing. We started with a small grocery store and turned it into a chain of 15 supermarkets across 3 states. My husband died 10 years ago, leaving me as the majority shareholder of Anderson Family Markets. But over the years, my children and grandchildren had slowly taken over the day-to-day operations, making decisions without consulting me, treating me like I was just some old woman who used to be important. They forgot who built this empire. They forgot whose name was on the founding documents. They forgot that I still owned 51% of the company. So at our annual family board meeting, surrounded by my 3 children, 5 grandchildren, and their expensive lawyers, I reminded them. And the gasps that followed, the shock on their faces when I took complete control of the company they thought was theirs. I'll never forget it. I sat at the head of the long mahogany conference table in our corporate headquarters. Around me sat my entire family, all dressed in expensive business suits, all looking confident and comfortable, all about to get the shock of their lives. My oldest son, Judge, 65 years old and CEO of the company for the past 8 years, was reviewing the agenda. All right, everyone, today's board meeting will cover our expansion into South Carolina, the rebranding initiative, and the proposed sale of our original location to make room for luxury condos. No, I said quietly. Judge paused. Excuse me, Mother. I said no, I repeated, louder this time. We're not selling the original store, we're not expanding into South Carolina, and we're definitely not rebranding. Judge exchanged glances with his siblings. My daughter Winnie, 62, who served as CFO, and my younger son Royal, 58, who was VP of Operations. Mother, Winnie said with forced patience, we've discussed all of this. The board approved these initiatives months ago. The board approved them, I said. I didn't. You don't need to approve them, Royal said, a hint of condescension in his voice. You're not involved in day-to-day operations anymore. We handle the business decisions now. Is that so? I asked calmly. I pulled out a folder from my briefcase and slid it across the table. Then, perhaps someone should remind you who actually owns this company. Judge picked up the folder and opened it. His face went pale as he read the documents inside. What is this? He asked, though his voice suggested he already knew. That, I said, is the company ownership structure. As you can see, I own 51% of Anderson Family Markets. You 3 each own 15%. The remaining 4% is split among the grandchildren. We know that, Mother, Winnie said impatiently. What's your point? My point, I said, standing up, is that 51% means I have controlling interest, which means I don't need your approval for anything, but you need mine. The room went silent. And as of today, I continued, I'm exercising that controlling interest. Judge, you're removed as CEO, effective immediately. Judge's mouth literally fell open. What? Winnie, you're removed as CFO. Royal, you're removed as VP of Operations. All 3 of you are demoted to advisory board members with no voting power. You can't do this, Royal shouted, jumping to his feet. I absolutely can, I said. Read the bylaws. As majority shareholder, I have the authority to remove any executive at any time for any reason. But why? Winnie demanded, her face red with anger and shock. We've been running this company successfully for years. Successfully, I repeated. You've been running it into the ground. You've forgotten the values your father and I built this business on. You've forgotten where we came from. You've forgotten who made all of this possible. This is insane, Judge said, his voice shaking. Mother, you can't just walk in here and… I'm not walking in here, I interrupted. I've been here the whole time. You're the ones who forgot. You stopped listening to me, stopped consulting me, started treating me like I was senile and irrelevant. Well, I'm neither senile nor irrelevant, and I'm taking my company back. My oldest grandchild, Sterling, 38, and the company's marketing director spoke up. Grandma, please, Let's talk about this rationally. There's nothing to talk about, I said firmly. The decision is made. I'm resuming the role of CEO, effective immediately. I'm appointing new executives from outside the family. And we're going back to the principles that made this company great in the first place. This is a hostile takeover, Winnie accused. By our own mother. It's not a takeover, I corrected. It's a reclamation. I'm reclaiming the company I built before you destroy it completely. Judge slammed his hand on the table. We have contracts, severance agreements. You can't just fire us without compensation. You're not fired, I said. You're reassigned. Your salaries remain the same, you keep your board seats, you just no longer have executive authority. Read your contracts more carefully next time. I looked around the table at my shocked family. My children whom I'd raised, my grandchildren whom I'd doted on, all staring at me like I'd grown a second head. This meeting is adjourned, I said. You have until 5 o'clock today to clear out your executive offices. The new leadership team starts tomorrow. Mother, wait, Judge started. But I'd already walked out of the conference room, leaving them all gasping in shock and disbelief. But to understand why I did what I did, I need to take you back to the beginning. I married Homer Anderson in 1974 when I was 21 years old. Homer was 23, ambitious, and full of big dreams. We were poor, both from working-class families, both determined to build something better for ourselves and our future children. In 1975, we scraped together every penny we had, $5,000 total, and bought a tiny grocery store in a rough neighborhood. It was rundown, barely profitable, but it was ours. I worked the register while pregnant with Judge. Homer stocked shelves and managed suppliers. We worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week. When Judge was born, I'd bring him to the store in a bassinet. I'd nurse him between customers, change his diapers in the back room, do whatever it took to keep the business running. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't easy, but it was ours. We slowly built a customer base. We treated people with respect, offered fair prices, stayed open late for working families who couldn't shop during the day. We became a fixture in the community. By 1980, we'd saved enough to buy a second location. By 1985, we had 4 stores. By 1990, we had 8. Homer and I did everything together, negotiating with suppliers, hearing employees, expanding to new locations. We were equal partners in every sense. And our 3 children grew up in those stores. They stocked shelves as teenagers, worked registers during summer breaks, learned the business from the ground up. Or so I thought. In 1995, Anderson Family Markets went public. We sold 30% of the company to investors, keeping 70% split between Homer and me. Suddenly, we were wealthy, really wealthy. The business was valued at $50 million, and our share was worth $35 million. We could have retired, could have sold out completely and lived in luxury. But we loved the business. It was our life's work, so we kept growing, kept building, kept expanding. By 2005, we had 15 stores and were valued at over $150 million. That year, Homer had a heart attack. He survived, but it was a wake-up call. He was 68 years old and had been working nonstop for 50 years. Maybe it's time to step back, Homer said from his hospital bed. Let the kids take over more of the operations. Are they ready? I asked, worried. They've been working in the business for decades, Homer said. Judge has his MBA, Winnie's a CPA. Royal knows operations inside and out. They're ready. So we promoted Judge to CEO, Winnie to CFO, and Royal to VP of operations. Homer and I moved into advisory roles, showing up for board meetings, but letting our children run the day-to-day business. It seemed like the natural progression. The kids were capable, educated, experienced. We'd trained them well. Or so we thought. In 2015, Homer died suddenly of a massive heart attack. He was 78 years old, and he died the way he would have wanted, at work, in his office, doing what he loved. I was devastated. We'd been married 41 years. We'd built everything together. And now he was gone. At the funeral, Judge gave a beautiful eulogy about his father's legacy, the empire he'd built, the family he'd provided for. Dad started with one small store and turned it into a multi-million-dollar company, Judge said. He was a visionary, a leader, a man who showed us what hard work and determination could accomplish. I noticed that he didn't mention me, not once. It stung, but I told myself I was being oversensitive. It was Homer's funeral. Of course the focus was on him. But it set a pattern I'd come to recognize over the years. After Homer's death, I inherited his shares of the company. Combined with the shares I already owned, I now controlled 51% of Anderson family markets. I attended board meetings, gave my input, tried to stay involved. But slowly, my children started making decisions without consulting me. "We're changing suppliers," Judge would announce at a meeting. "Shouldn't we discuss that first?" I'd ask. "It's already done, Mother," Judge would say. "We needed to move quickly." "We're closing the original store," Winnie announced at another meeting. "What? That's where we started. That store means everything, too." "It's not profitable anymore," Winnie interrupted. "Sentimentality doesn't pay the bills." "We're rebranding," Royal told me. "New logo, new color scheme, new everything." "But the old branding represents our history, our values." "It represents outdated thinking," Royal said. "We need to modernize." Every meeting, it was the same. They'd tell me what they'd already decided. They'd dismiss my concerns. They'd act like I was just some old woman who didn't understand modern business. They forgot that I'd been running this business since before they were born. The grandchildren were even worse. Sterling, my oldest grandchild at 38, had a fancy marketing degree and thought he knew everything. "Grandma, your generation shopped based on loyalty and personal relationships," Sterling told me once. "But millennials shop based on brand identity and social media presence. You wouldn't understand." "I understand that we built this business on trust and community," I said. "Those values don't expire just because there's new technology." "That's exactly the kind of outdated thinking that's holding us back," Sterling said dismissively. My granddaughter, Pearlie, 35 and in charge of human resources, was just as bad. "Grandma, the way you and Grandpa treated employees was paternalistic and problematic," Pearlie told me. "We need a more professional corporate structure." "We treated our employees like family," I protested. "We knew their names, their children's names, their stories. We cared about them as people." "That's inappropriate boundary crossing," Pearlie said. "Employees aren't family, they're resources." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. These were my values, my grandchildren, raised in this business, and they were turning it into something cold and corporate. The final straw came 3 months ago at a board meeting. Judge announced that they'd received an offer to sell Anderson Family Markets to a national grocery chain for $300 million. "We're considering accepting the offer," Judge said. "It's an incredible amount of money. We'd all be set for life." "Absolutely not," I said immediately. "This company is our legacy. We're not selling it." "Mother, with all due respect, this is a business decision," Winnie said. "And business decisions should be made based on logic, not emotion." "This isn't emotion," I said. "This is principle. Your father and I didn't build this company just to make money. We built it to create something lasting, something that could be passed down through generations." "We are passing it down," Royal said, "by selling it and giving everyone financial security." "You're destroying it," I said. "You're erasing everything we built." "We're evolving it," Sterling chimed in. "Grandma, you need to accept that the business has outgrown its origins. It's not about one small grocery store anymore. It's about maximizing shareholder value." "I am the majority shareholder," I said, my voice rising, "and I'm saying no to the sale." "Your shares are tied up in a trust," Judge said calmly. "You can't vote them without the approval of the trust administrator, which is me." I stared at my son. "What are you talking about?" "After Dad died, We restructured the ownership to protect the company from estate taxes, Winnie explained. Your shares are held in a family trust. Judge is the administrator. So while you technically own the shares, you can't vote them without his approval. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. When did this happen? 5 years ago, Royal said. We sent you the paperwork, you signed it. I vaguely remembered signing a stack of legal documents they told me were routine estate planning. I'd trusted my children. I'd believed they had my best interests at heart. How stupid I'd been. So you're telling me I have no say in whether my company is sold? I asked quietly. Not without the trust administrator's approval, Judge confirmed. And I'm approving the sale. We're meeting with the buyers next month to finalize terms. That's when I knew I had to act. I left that board meeting and went straight to see a lawyer. Not the family lawyer who'd helped set up the trust, but a new lawyer recommended by a friend. Her name was Zenobia Hart, and she specialized in business litigation and family disputes. I told her everything: the trust, the sale, my children taking control without my consent. Zenobia reviewed all the documents carefully. Mrs. Anderson, I have good news and bad news. Start with the bad news, I said. The bad news is that the trust is real and legally binding. As structured, Judge does have control over how your shares are voted. My heart sank. But, Zenobia continued, the good news is that the trust was set up incorrectly. There are several legal errors in the documentation. If we challenge it in court, we have a very good chance of getting it dissolved. How long would that take? I asked. 6 to 9 months, probably, Zenobia said. Maybe longer if they fight hard. They're selling the company in a month, I said. I don't have that kind of time. Zenobia thought for a moment. There might be another way. Let me do some research and get back to you. 3 days later, Zenobia called me with a solution. I found a loophole, she said. The trust gives Judge control over voting your shares, but it doesn't give him control over selling your shares. You can still transfer or sell your ownership. I don't want to sell my shares, I protested. I want to keep the company in the family. You're not going to sell them, Zenobia explained. You're going to transfer them to a new entity, a corporation that you control. The trust only governs the original shares. Once they're in the new corporation, the trust no longer applies. Is that legal? I asked. Completely legal, Zenobia confirmed. The trust document never anticipated this scenario. It's a loophole, but it's a legitimate one. Let's do it, I said. Over the next 2 weeks, Zenobia helped me set up a new corporation called Anderson Holdings, LLC. I transferred my 51% of Anderson Family Markets shares into this new entity. The trust still technically held the shares, but now those shares belonged to Anderson Holdings, which I controlled completely. It was complicated legal maneuvering, but it worked. I also hired a private investigator to dig into what my children had been doing with the company. What I discovered shocked me. They'd been systematically dismantling everything Homer and I had built. They'd fired longtime employees who'd been with us for decades, replacing them with cheaper, less experienced workers. They'd switched to cheaper suppliers, reducing product quality to increase profit margins. They'd cut community programs we'd funded for years, scholarships, food banks, local sponsorships. They'd closed or relocated stores in underserved neighborhoods, focusing only on wealthy areas. And they'd been paying themselves enormous salaries and bonuses while cutting employee benefits. They'd turned our family business into exactly the kind of soulless corporation we'd always hated. Which brings us to the board, meeting where this story started. I'd called an emergency meeting, telling everyone it was mandatory. They all came, expecting routine business. Instead, they got a revolution. After I announced that I was taking back control, removing them from their executive positions, and appointing new leadership, the room erupted in chaos. "This is illegal," Winnie shrieked. "We'll sue you." "Sue me with what standing?" I asked calmly. "I own the majority of the company. Everything I've done is completely legal. Ask your lawyers." Judge's lawyer, a slick man named Burrell, spoke up. Mrs. Anderson, your shares are held in a trust that Judge administers. We're held in a trust, I corrected. Past tense. I transferred them to Anderson Holdings LLC, which I control. The trust no longer applies. Again, ask your lawyer. Better yet, ask mine. Zenobia, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner, gave a little wave. You transferred the shares? Winnie asked, her voice high with panic. How? When? 2 weeks ago, I said. Legally and properly. All the paperwork has been filed with the state. But you can't just, Royal started. I can and I did, I said. You thought you could box me out, make decisions without me, sell my company out from under me. You thought I was just some helpless old woman who'd go along with whatever you decided. You were wrong. Sterling spoke up again. Grandma, please, let's not be hasty. We can negotiate. There's nothing to negotiate, I said. The decision is made. You're all removed from executive positions. The sale to the national chain is canceled. We're going back to the values that made this company great. This will destroy the company, Judge said desperately. You don't understand modern business. You're going to run it into the ground. I built this company from one small store to 15 locations and hundreds of employees, I said. I think I understand business just fine. What I don't understand is how my own children could forget that. How you could forget where you came from. How you could forget who sacrificed everything to give you the opportunities you have. Pearlie stood up, tears in her eyes. Grandma, we never forgot. We just wanted to honor Grandpa's legacy by making the business as successful as possible. By selling it, I interrupted. By dismantling everything he believed in, by turning it into a soulless corporation. That's not honoring his legacy. That's destroying it. The room fell silent again. You have until 5 o'clock to clear your offices, I repeated. The new executive team starts tomorrow. This meeting is adjourned. And I walked out, leaving my entire family gasping in shock at what I'd done. This story is just beginning. Subscribe now. Hit that like button and turn on NOTFICTONS. Drop a comment. Did Dovey do the right thing? Would you have done the same in her position? Where are you watching from? United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Jamaica, Australia? Let me know. The aftermath of the board meeting was immediate and chaotic. Within an hour, my phone was ringing constantly. Judge, Winnie, Royal, and various grandchildren all calling, texting, and emailing, some begging, some threatening, some demanding explanations. I ignored them all. Instead, I focused on what needed to be done. I had a company to save, and I had less than 24 hours to implement my plan before the family had time to organize a counterattack. Zenobia met me at the corporate office that evening. How are you holding up? She asked. I'm fine, I said. Focused. What do I need to worry about legally? They could try to challenge your ownership transfer in court, Zenobia said. Claim you were coerced or incompetent when you signed the paperwork, but that would be hard to prove. We documented everything carefully. You had independent counsel, me, and you're clearly of sound mind. What else? I asked. They could try to call a special shareholders meeting to vote you out, Zenobia said. But you own 51%, so any vote would go your way. They'd need to convince some of the minority shareholders to side with them. Will they do that? I asked. Probably try, Zenobia said. But the minority shareholders are mostly institutional investors who care about profits and stability. Your children have been erratic lately, making risky decisions. You represent steady leadership. I think most will side with you. Good, I said. What about the sale to the national chain? You have the authority to cancel it, Zenobia confirmed. As majority shareholder and CEO, you can unilaterally terminate negotiations. There might be some penalty fees involved, but nothing catastrophic. Do it, I said. Send them formal notice that Anderson Family Markets is no longer for sale. Done, Zenobia said. Now about this new executive team you mentioned. Who are you hearing? I smiled. People who remember what this company used to stand for. That evening, I made 3 phone calls to people I'd worked with over the years. people who'd left the company after clashing with my children's new direction. The first call was to Artie Washington, 62, who'd been our VP of Community Relations until Judge fired him 5 years ago for wasting money on charitable programs. "Dovey," Artie sounded surprised to hear from me. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," I said. "Better than fine, actually. I'm calling to offer you your old job back, but with a promotion. I want you to be our new Chief Operating Officer." There was a long pause. "What happened to Royal?" "I removed him," I said simply. "Along with Judge and Winnie, I'm cleaning house, Artie, getting back to our roots. And I need people who understand what this company was always supposed to be about." "Dovey, I'd love to come back," Artie said. "But are you sure about this? Your kids aren't going to take this lying down." "I'm counting on it," I said. "So is that a yes?" "Hell yes," Artie said. "When do I start?" "Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. The second call was to Pearlie Thompson, 58, who'd been our director of operations until Winnie forced her out 3 years ago for refusing to cut employee benefits. "You want me to be CFO?" Pearlie asked incredulously. "Dovey, your daughter is the CFO." "Was the CFO," I corrected. "Past tense. I need someone who understands that employees are people, not line items on a budget. Someone who won't sacrifice our workers just to boost quarterly earnings." "I'm in," Pearlie said immediately. "Those kids of yours have been destroying everything you and Homer built. It's about damn time someone stopped them." The third call was to Judge Martinez, 55, who'd been our head of supplier relations until Royal replaced him 2 years ago with someone willing to cut corners on quality. "You're making me VP of purchasing?" Judge Martinez asked. "Dovey, are you sure about this? Your family is going to fight you hard." "Let them fight," I said. "I'm done accommodating them. Are you in or out?" "I'm in," Judge said. "See you tomorrow." By midnight, I had my new executive team in place. 3 people who understood the values Homer and I had built the company on. 3 people my children had pushed out for refusing to compromise those values. Now they were back, and we were taking the company back. At 7:30 the next morning, I arrived at corporate headquarters to find my 3 children waiting in the parking lot with their lawyer, Burl. "Mother, we need to talk," Judge said, blocking my path to the building. "We can talk in my office," I said calmly, "after you've cleared out your things." "We're not clearing out anything," Winnie said, her voice shrill. "You can't just kick us out of our own company." "It's not your company," I said. "It's my company. I own 51%. That makes it mine." "This is insane," Royal said. "Mom, you're 71 years old. You can't run a company this size by yourself." "I'm not by myself," I said. "I've hired a new executive team. They start today." "Who?" Judge demanded. "Who could you possibly have hired on such short notice?" "Artie Washington, Pearlie Thompson, and Judge Martinez," I said, watching their faces change. "You hired the people we fired?" Winnie asked, her face going red. "Mother, those people were incompetent. They couldn't adapt to modern business practices." "They refused to compromise the company's values," I corrected. "There's a difference, and now they're back." Burl, their lawyer, stepped forward. "Mrs. Anderson, we're prepared to file an emergency injunction to prevent you from making any changes to company leadership or operations. We'll argue that your actions are detrimental to the company and its shareholders." "File whatever you want," I said. "But it won't work. I have controlling interest. I have the legal authority to make these decisions. And I have 3 new executives who start in 30 minutes. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." I walked past them into the building, leaving them standing in the parking lot. "My new executive team. 4th priority," I said. "Review all supplier contracts. Judge Martinez, I want you to evaluate quality versus cost. If we're using inferior products to save money, I want to switch back to better suppliers." "That'll reduce our profit margins," Judge Martinez warned. "I don't care," I said. "We built our reputation on quality. We're not sacrificing that for a few extra percentage points of profit." Dovey, you realize all of these changes will significantly impact our bottom line, Pearlie said gently. Wall Street isn't going to like it. I don't care what Wall Street likes, I said. We're a family business, not a publicly traded company trying to please shareholders. We're privately held, and I'm the majority owner. We do what's right, not what's profitable. I love it, Artie said, grinning. It's like the old days. Exactly, I said. That's the whole point. Now let's get to work. At 10 a.m., I called an all-staff meeting at our headquarters. Every employee who could make it, about 200 people, crowded into our largest conference room. I stood at the front, looking out at faces that ranged from curious to concerned to hopeful. Good morning, everyone, I began. For those who don't know me personally, I'm Dovey Anderson. 50 years ago, my late husband Homer and I opened a small grocery store with $5,000 and a dream. That store became Anderson Family Markets, the company you all work for today. Over the past 10 years, since Homer's death, I've watched this company drift away from the values we founded it on. Cost-cutting, quality reduction, treating employees as expenses rather than assets. It broke my heart. So yesterday, I took action. I removed my children from their executive positions and appointed new leadership committed to returning this company to its roots. There were gasps and whispers throughout the room. Effective immediately, I continued, we're restoring all employee benefits that were cut over the past 3 years. Full health insurance, retirement contributions, paid time off. You'll see the changes in your next paycheck. The room erupted in applause. We're also increasing starting wages by 15% across the board. We're bringing back annual bonuses based on company performance, not just executive performance. And we're reinstating the employee stock purchase program that was discontinued 4 years ago. People were crying now, hugging each other, cheering. This company was built on the idea that if we take care of our employees, they'll take care of our customers, I said. We forgot that somewhere along the way, but we're remembering now. I can't promise the transition will be smooth, I continued. My children aren't happy about these changes. There will probably be legal challenges, media attention, maybe some bumpy months ahead. But I can promise you this. As long as I'm in charge, you will be treated with dignity and respect. You will be paid fairly. And you will be valued as the vital members of this family that you are. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. As I walked out of that meeting, I felt more energized than I had in years. This was what the company was supposed to be. This was what Homer and I had built. And I wasn't going to let anyone destroy it. That evening, Judge called and asked if we could have a family meeting. Just him, Winnie, Royal, and me. No lawyers, no grandchildren, just the 4 of us. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at my house, where I'd lived for 40 years. They arrived together, looking tired and defeated. Mom, please, Winnie started before even sitting down. Can we talk about this reasonably? I'm listening, I said. You embarrassed us, Judge said. In front of the entire company. You humiliated us by removing us from our positions without any warning. You were planning to sell the company without my consent, I countered. You manipulated me into signing a trust that gave you control over my shares. Who embarrassed whom? We were trying to protect you, Royal said. The trust was set up for estate planning to minimize taxes. The trust was set up to cut me out, I interrupted. To make decisions without me, to make me irrelevant in the company I built. That's not true, Winnie protested. Then why didn't Judge consult me before approving the sale? I asked. If I'm not irrelevant, why am I not included in major decisions? They had no answer. Here's what I think happened, I said. You 3 grew up watching your father and me work 16-hour days. You saw us struggle and sacrifice. And somewhere along the way, you started to resent it. You thought we were old-fashioned, inefficient, too soft. You thought you could do better. That's not, Judge started. Let me finish, I said firmly. You got your fancy degrees, learned about modern business practices, and decided that Homer and I didn't know what we were doing, that our way was outdated, that profit margins and shareholder value were more important than people and community. You forgot who built this company, I continued. You forgot the values we built it on. You forgot that Homer and I didn't do this just for money. We did it to create something meaningful, something that would last, something we could be proud of. We are proud of it, Winnie insisted. That's why we've worked so hard to grow it. You've worked hard to monetize it, I corrected. To squeeze every possible dollar out of it, regardless of the cost to employees or quality or community. That's not the same as building something meaningful. We sat in tense silence for a moment. What do you want from us, Mom? Royal finally asked. What would it take for you to give us our positions back? I don't want anything from you, I said. And I'm not giving you your positions back. Not now, maybe not ever. Then what? Judge asked. We just stay on the board with no real power. We just watch you run the company. You learn, I said. You watch how real leadership works. You see what happens when you prioritize people over profits. And maybe, if you actually learn the lessons, we can talk about you having operational roles again someday. But not now. This is punishment, Winnie said bitterly. No, I said. This is consequences. There's a difference. The next day, the story broke in the business press. Founder returns. 71-year-old takes control of family business, ousts her own children. The article detailed the shakeup, my removal of Judge, Winnie, and Royal from their executive positions, and my cancellation of the sale to the national chain. Within hours, I was getting calls from reporters wanting interviews, industry analysts wanting comments, even a few TV shows wanting me to appear. I declined most of them, but I did agree to one interview with Business Today, a respected trade publication. The reporter, a young woman named Artie Chen, came to my office. Mrs. Anderson, you've caused quite a stir in the business community, Artie said. Some are calling you a visionary. Others are saying you're out of touch and will run the company into the ground. How do you respond? I don't respond to critics, I said. I focus on doing what's right. If people don't understand that, that's their problem, not mine. Your children claim you're making emotional decisions rather than business decisions, Artie said. They say restoring employee benefits and community programs will hurt profitability. My children forgot that businesses exist to serve people, not the other way around, I said. Yes, we need to be profitable to survive. But profit isn't the only measure of success. Employee satisfaction, customer loyalty, community impact, those matter too. But in today's competitive market, Artie started. In today's competitive market, I interrupted, the companies that win are the ones that actually give a damn about something beyond quarterly earnings, the ones that treat their workers well, the ones that provide real value to customers, the ones that are part of their communities rather than parasites on them. So you're saying your children were running the company wrong? Artie asked. I'm saying they forgot where they came from, I said. They forgot that 50 years ago, we started with one small store and a commitment to treating people right. That commitment is what made us successful, not fancy marketing or cost-cutting or any of the corporate nonsense they learned in business school. The interview went on for an hour. When it was published 2 days later, it went viral. Suddenly, I was being held up as an example of ethical business leadership. Other family business owners reached out to thank me for standing up for values over profits. Customers started showing up at our stores, saying they wanted to support a company that treated its workers well. And my sales numbers started climbing. 2 weeks after I took control, Judge called a special shareholders meeting, just as Zenobia had predicted. He convinced a few of the minority shareholders to support a vote of no confidence in my leadership. The meeting was tense. About 30 people gathered in the boardroom. Me, my 3 children, various grandchildren, and the minority shareholders who owned the remaining 49% of the company. Judge stood up to present his case. Shareholders, we're here today because our mother, in a moment of emotional decision-making, has made changes that threaten the long-term viability of this company. She canceled a $300 million sale that would have provided tremendous returns to all of us, Judge continued. She's increased operating costs by over 15 million annually with benefit restorations and community programs. And she's appointed inexperienced leadership with no modern business training. We're asking for a vote of no confidence, Judge concluded, and a vote to reinstate the previous executive team, my siblings and myself. I stood up. May I respond? Judge nodded reluctantly. Everything Judge said is technically true, I began. I did cancel the sale. I did increase operating costs. I did appoint new leadership. But here's what Judge didn't tell you, I continued. Sales are up 18% since I took over 2 weeks ago. Customer satisfaction scores have jumped 20 points. Employee turnover has dropped by half. And we've received more positive media coverage in the past 2 weeks than we got in the previous 5 years combined. I pulled out a chart showing the numbers. The market is responding to our return to values. Customers want to support companies that treat people well. Employees work harder when they're treated with respect. And communities rally around businesses that invest in them. You want to vote me out and bring back leadership that was systematically destroying what my husband and I spent 50 years building? I asked. Go ahead, vote. But know that if you do, I'll sell my 51% to someone who actually understands what this company stands for. And you'll all be minority shareholders in whatever that new owner decides to do. The threat was clear. If they voted me out, I'd make sure they lost everything. One of the minority shareholders, a woman named Zenobia Cross, who owned about 5%, stood up. I've been a shareholder for 15 years, Zenobia said. I've watched this company drift away from what made it special. Judge, Winnie, Royal, you're good at the technical aspects of business, but you don't have your mother's heart. And in this industry, heart matters. I'm voting to keep Dovey as CEO, Zenobia concluded, and I encourage everyone else to do the same. One by one, the other minority shareholders agreed. Some reluctantly, some enthusiastically, but all of them recognized that I had a plan that was already showing results. The vote was called. The result, 78% in favor of maintaining my leadership. Judge's motion failed completely. This story is getting more intense. Subscribe now, smash that like button, and turn on NOTFICTONS. Drop a comment. Should Dovey ever give her children back their positions? Would you shop at a store with these values? Where are you watching from? After the shareholders' meeting, my children finally seemed to accept that I wasn't backing down. But acceptance didn't mean cooperation. Judge threw himself into looking for other business opportunities, clearly determined to prove he didn't need the family company. Winnie became cold and distant, speaking to me only when absolutely necessary and with clipped professional courtesy. Royal, surprisingly, was the one who seemed most affected. He started showing up at my house unannounced, wanting to talk, trying to understand what had gone wrong. But the real shock came from the grandchildren. 3 weeks after I took control, my grandchildren called their own meeting, without inviting me. Sterling, Pearlie, and the 3 other grandchildren who worked for the company gathered at Sterling's apartment to strategize. I only knew about it because my assistant Octavia, who was Sterling's cousin, overheard them planning and warned me. Mrs. Anderson, I think you should know what they're planning, Octavia said nervously. They're talking about staging some kind of protest or walkout. They want to embarrass you into giving their parents back their positions. What kind of protest? I asked. I'm not sure exactly, Octavia admitted. But Sterling mentioned something about going to the media, maybe organizing employees to sign a petition. They think if they can show that the company is unstable under your leadership, the board will force you out. I thanked Octavia and called Zenobia my lawyer. Can they actually organize a walkout? I asked. Legally, yes, Zenobia said. Employees have the right to organize. But if your grandchildren are encouraging it just to undermine you, that could be grounds for termination. They'd be acting against the company's interests. I don't want to fire my grandchildren, I said, but I can't let them sabotage everything I'm trying to rebuild. Then you need to confront them directly, Zenobia said, before they have a chance to act. The next morning, I called Sterling into my office. He came reluctantly, his expression guarded. "Close the door and sit down," I said. Sterling did, but his body language was defensive, arms crossed, jaw tight. "I know about the meeting at your apartment," I said. "I know you're planning to organize some kind of protest or employee action against me." Sterling's face flushed. "Who told you that?" "It doesn't matter," I said. "What matters is that you're actively working to undermine this company, your family's company, the business your great-grandparents built from nothing." "You're the one who undermined it," Sterling shot back. "You kicked out experienced leadership and replaced them with people who haven't worked here in years. You canceled a sale that would have made all of us rich. You're destroying our legacy, Grandma, not protecting it." "Our legacy," I repeated. "Sterling, what do you know about our legacy? What do you actually know about how this company started?" "I know Grandpa Homer opened the first store in 1975, Sterling said. "I know he built it into a successful chain. I know he was a brilliant businessman." "And what about me?" I interrupted. "What was I doing while Homer was being brilliant?" Sterling hesitated. You helped. You worked at the store." "I worked the register while pregnant with your father," I said. "I stocked shelves, I did the books, I negotiated with suppliers, I handled hearing, I managed inventory. I did everything Homer did, Sterling. We built this business together as equal partners." "But history only remembers him," I continued. "Your father's eulogy didn't mention me. The company website's About You's page talks about Homer's vision and leadership with one sentence about his supportive wife. Even you just now, you credited everything to Homer." Sterling looked uncomfortable. "I didn't mean." "You did mean it," I said. "Because that's what you've been taught. That Homer was the brilliant founder and I was just his helper. That men build businesses and women support them. That my contributions don't count because I'm a woman of a certain generation who supposedly doesn't understand modern business." "That's not what I think," Sterling protested. "Isn't it?" I asked. "Then why are you organizing against me? Why do you assume I don't know what I'm doing? Why do you think your father and his siblings, who have only run this company for 10 years, know better than the woman who spent 50 years building it?" Sterling didn't answer. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You're going to cancel whatever protest or walkout you're planning. You're going to stop undermining my authority. And you're going to start actually working to support this company instead of sabotaging it." "And if I don't?" Sterling asked defiantly. "Then you're fired," I said simply. "I don't want to fire my grandson, but I will not tolerate anyone, family or not, actively working against this company's interests." Sterling stared at me. "You'd really fire me?" "Without hesitation," I confirmed. "I love you, Sterling, but I love this company more, because this company represents 50 years of work, sacrifice, and commitment. You represent one marketing director who thinks he knows better than he does." "That's cold, Grandma," Sterling said. "That's business," I replied. "Something your generation claims to understand better than mine. So understand this, I'm in charge. You can work with me or you can work somewhere else. Choose." Sterling stood up, his face red with anger and embarrassment. "I'll think about it." "You have until end of business today," I said. "After that, if I hear about any more organizing or protests, you're done." Sterling left without another word. That weekend, Royal asked if he could bring his family over for dinner. Him, his wife Melvina, and their 2 adult children who didn't work for the company. I agreed, curious about what he wanted. They arrived at 6, and we sat down to a meal I'd prepared myself. Fried chicken, collard greens, cornbread, all the comfort foods I'd grown up eating and raised my children on. "This tastes just like when we were kids," Royal said, and there was genuine emotion in his voice. "That's because it's the same recipes," I said. "I haven't changed, you have." Royal put down his fork. "Mom, I've been doing a lot of thinking since you took over the company, and I realize we lost our way." "Keep going," I said. "When Dad died, I think we all tried to prove we could run things without him," Royal said. "We wanted to show that we were just as smart, just as capable. And somewhere in trying to prove ourselves, we forgot what the company was actually about. It became about ego, Royal continued. About showing Wall Street we could compete with the big chains. About impressing our business school professors with our financial engineering. About making ourselves look successful. We forgot about Mrs. Washington, who worked the register at Store 3 for 30 years, Royal said. We forgot about Mr. Chen, who started as a stock boy and became a store manager. We forgot about the families who depended on us for good jobs and good food. We forgot about you and Dad, Royal concluded, tears in his eyes. And I'm so sorry, Mom, I'm so sorry. I felt my own tears starting. Do you really mean that? Or are you just saying it to get your position back? I mean it, Royal said. I don't even want my position back. Not unless I can prove I've actually learned something. I was a terrible VP of operations, Mom. I cut corners and squeezed costs and treated people like numbers on a spreadsheet. I need to relearn how to do this right. What are you proposing? I asked. Let me work under Artie, Royal said. As a regular operations manager, not an executive. Let me learn how things used to be done when we actually cared about people. And if I prove I can do it your way, then maybe someday you'll consider promoting me again. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and I saw genuine remorse, genuine humility, genuine desire to change. Okay, I said. You can start Monday as an operations manager reporting to Artie. Same salary as other managers, no special treatment. You prove yourself, and we'll talk about advancement. Royal hugged me tightly. Thank you, Mom. I won't let you down. We'll see, I said, but I was hopeful. The next week, I did something I hadn't done in years. I visited our original store. The store where Homer and I had started everything 50 years ago. Judge had planned to demolish it and sell the land to luxury condo developers. But now that I was back in charge, that store was staying exactly where it was. I walked through the doors at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, and the first person I saw was Mrs. Octavia Washington. Not my assistant Octavia, but the Mrs. Washington Royal had mentioned, who'd worked the register for 30 years. She was 73 years old now, working part-time, and when she saw me, her face lit up. Miss Dovey, she exclaimed, is that really you? It's really me, I said, hugging her. How are you, Octavia? I'm good, baby, real good, Octavia said. Especially now that you're back in charge. We heard what you did, taking the company back from those children of yours. Best thing that could have happened. You think so? I asked. I know so, Octavia said firmly. Things haven't been right around here for years. They cut our benefits, they cut our hours, they brought in all these young managers who didn't know nothing about nothing. But you remember, don't you? You remember how it used to be. I do, I said. And we're going back to that. Benefits restored, hours increased, community programs restarted, all of it. Octavia's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, Miss Dovey. You don't know what that means to us. Some of these folks been struggling real bad. I spent the whole day at that store, talking to employees, listening to their stories, understanding what had changed and what needed to be fixed. I met Judge Harris, 58, who'd been a stock manager for 25 years. Mr. Judge used to know all our names, he told me. He'd ask about our families, remember our kids' birthdays. But your son Judge, the CEO, he walked through here once last year, didn't say a word to any of us, just looked at inventory numbers and left. I met Winnie Chen, 42, a department manager. When I started 10 years ago, this felt like a family, she said. Now it feels like just another corporate job. I've been thinking about leaving, honestly, but if things are really changing back. They are, I assured her. I promise you they are. By the end of the day, I'd heard dozens of stories, all variations on the same theme. The company had lost its soul. Employees felt like disposable parts instead of valued team members. Customers noticed the decline in quality and service. The community felt abandoned. But there was hope, too. Hope that things could be different. Hope that I could restore what had been lost. 2 days after my store visit, Judge called and asked if he, Winnie, and Royal could come over. We need to have a serious conversation, he said. They arrived that evening, and I could tell something was different. They seemed less defensive, less angry, more contemplative. "Mom, we've been talking," Judge began. "The three of us, really talking for the first time in years, probably. And we realized something," Winnie continued. "Royal was right. We got so caught up in proving ourselves that we destroyed what you and Dad built." "I spent 2 weeks working as an operations manager," Royal said. "Reporting to Artie, working alongside regular employees, actually doing the job instead of just managing it from an office. And it opened my eyes, Mom. I saw how much damage we'd done." "We're not asking for our positions back," Judge said. "At least not yet. But we want to make things right. We want to learn how to run this company the right way." "What are you proposing?" I asked cautiously. "Put us all in the same position as Royal," Winnie said. "Make me a regular financial analyst reporting to Pearlie. Make Judge a community relations coordinator reporting to Artie. Let us work our way back up by proving we understand what this company is actually about." I looked at my 3 children. They seemed sincere, but I'd been fooled before. "Why should I trust you?" I asked bluntly. "You tried to sell the company, you organized against me. You told shareholders I was incompetent. Why should I believe this change is real?" "Because we've lost everything that mattered," Judge said quietly. "Our positions, our pride, our reputation. All we have left is the truth, that we were wrong and you were right." "And because we went to the original store," Winnie added. "We talked to Mrs. Washington, Mr. Harris, all the employees Dad used to know by name, and they told us how things used to be, before we ruined it." "We finally understood what you and Dad built," Royal said. "Not just a business, but a community, a family. And we destroyed that family by treating it like a commodity." I felt tears in my eyes. "You really mean this?" "We really mean it," all 3 said together. "Okay," I said. "Starting Monday, you 3 are junior managers in your respective departments. No executive privileges. No special treatment. You work your way up like anyone else would have to." "Thank you, Mom," Judge said. "We won't let you down this time." "We'll see," I said. But for the first time in years, I felt hopeful about my children. 6 months after I took control of Anderson Family Markets, the transformation was remarkable. Sales were up 32%. Customer satisfaction scores were at an all-time high. Employee retention had improved dramatically, and we'd expanded our community programs to include financial literacy classes, job training programs, and small business mentoring. The business press, which had initially been skeptical, was now writing glowing profiles about our values-based business model and return to ethical capitalism. More importantly, my children and grandchildren had truly changed. Judge was working in community relations, rebuilding relationships with local organizations and nonprofits. He discovered a talent for connecting with people that he'd never developed when he was CEO too busy looking at spreadsheets. Winnie was in finance, working under Pearlie Thompson, learning how to balance profitability with sustainability. She'd apologized personally to every employee whose benefits she'd cut. Royal had become one of our best operations managers, beloved by his staff for his hands-on approach and genuine care for their well-being. And Sterling, my grandson who'd planned to organize against me, was now heading up a new initiative to document the company's history, interviewing longtime employees, collecting stories, preserving the legacy I'd been afraid would be lost. "Grandma, I'm working on the company history project," Sterling told me one day. "And I've been interviewing employees who worked with you and Grandpa Homer in the early years." "And," I asked. "And I realized I had no idea what you actually did," Sterling admitted. "Everyone talks about Grandpa's vision and leadership, but when I dug deeper, I found out you did just as much, maybe more. You were the one who negotiated the first expansion loan. You were the one who developed our employee training program. You were the one who started the community giving program. But somehow history erased you," Sterling continued. "And I think we kept erasing you. We gave Grandpa credit for everything and acted like you were just along for the ride." "Yes," I said simply. I'm sorry, Grandma, Sterling said. I'm going to make sure the real history is told. The one where you and Grandpa built this together, where you were equal partners, where your contributions are recognized. Thank you, I said, hugging him. That means more than you know. 6 months after the takeover, we held another board meeting. But this time, the atmosphere was completely different. My new executive team presented impressive results, increased profits despite increased costs, because employee satisfaction and customer loyalty had driven sales growth that more than compensated. I think it's time to discuss the future, Artie Washington said. Dovey, you've successfully turned this company around. You've proven that values-based business works. But you're 71 years old. Have you thought about succession planning? I have, I said, but I wanted to wait until I was sure we had the right leadership in place. And do we? Pearlie Thompson asked. We're getting there, I said. Judge, Winnie, and Royal have proven over the past 6 months that they've learned from their mistakes. They've worked their way up from junior positions to senior managers. They've demonstrated real understanding of what this company stands for. So I'm proposing the following, I continued. I'll remain as CEO for another 2 years. During that time, we'll create a co-leadership structure with Artie, Pearlie, and Judge Martinez as executive VPs. My children will continue in their senior manager roles, with the possibility of promotion to VP level if they continue to perform well. After 2 years, I'll transition to chairman of the board, I said, and we'll evaluate who's ready to take over as CEO. It might be one of my children. It might be one of you. It might be someone we haven't hired yet, but it will be someone who understands what we've built here. One more thing, I added. I'm amending the bylaws to require that any future CEO must spend at least 1 year working as a regular employee before being eligible for promotion. No more executives who have never worked a register or stocked a shelf. Everyone leads from experience, not just theory. The board unanimously approved my proposals. Subscribe now, smash that like button, and turn on NOTFICTONS. Drop a comment. Do you think Dovey's children deserve another chance at leadership? Would you work for a company with these values? Where are you watching from? 2 years after I took control of Anderson Family Markets, I stood in front of a crowd of 500 people, employees, family members, community leaders, and business partners, at our company's 50th anniversary celebration. It was being held at the original store, the one my children had wanted to demolish. Instead, we'd renovated it beautifully, turning it into a combination working store and company museum, documenting our 50-year journey from that $5,000 investment to a $180 million business. I was 73 years old, and this would be my last major act as CEO. Tomorrow, I'd officially transition to chairman of the board and hand over daily operations to new leadership. But tonight was about celebrating everything we'd accomplished and everything we'd almost lost. The celebration began with a video Sterling had created for the company history project. It showed pictures from 1975, Homer and me standing in front of our tiny first store, young and hopeful and exhausted. Then images of us working, me pregnant with Judge, standing at the register, Homer stocking shelves, the two of us counting cash at the end of a long day. The video showed our expansion over the years, but it also showed something else, the employees who'd been with us from the beginning. Mrs. Octavia Washington, hired in 1976. Mr. Judge Harris, who started in 1978. Dozens of faces, dozens of stories, all part of our family. Then the video showed the darker years, sterile corporate photos, impersonal PR shots, images that looked successful but felt empty. Finally, it showed the rebirth, employee celebrations when benefits were restored, community events we'd restarted, customers returning to stores that remembered their roots. When the video ended, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. 50 years ago, I began my speech, my husband Homer and I made a bet. We bet that if you treated people well, employees, customers, neighbors, they'd reward you with loyalty. We bet that community mattered more than profit margins. We bet that character counted for more than cleverness. For 40 years, that bet paid off, I continued. We built a business we were proud of, not just because it was successful, but because it was good. It meant something. It stood for something. But then we lost our way, I said, looking at my 3 children seated in the front row. After Homer died, the next generation, my children tried to modernize, to compete, to prove they could be just as successful as their parents. And in doing so, they almost destroyed everything we'd built. They forgot who built this company, I said. They forgot the values we'd built it on. They forgot that success without meaning is just emptiness. 2 years ago, I had to make the hardest decision of my life, I continued. I had to take control away from my own children. I had to remove them from positions they'd held for years. I had to essentially tell them that they'd failed. It wasn't about punishment, I said. It was about preservation. I couldn't let them destroy what Homer and I had spent our lives building. I couldn't let our employees be treated as disposable. I couldn't let our community lose something that mattered. So I took control, I said, and they gasped. They couldn't believe their mother, this old woman they'd been dismissing and sidelining, still had the power and the will to stop them. The audience laughed and applauded. But here's what happened next, I continued. My children, Judge, Winnie, and Royal, they didn't just accept defeat. They learned. They humbled themselves. They started over from the bottom and worked their way back up. They relearned the values they'd forgotten. They became the leaders their father and I had always hoped they'd be. I gestured for my children to stand. Reluctantly, they did, and the audience gave them a standing ovation. It wasn't easy, I said. It took 2 years of hard work, humility, and growth, but they did it. And now I'm proud to announce that tomorrow, when I transition to chairman of the board, my son Judge will become our new CEO. The gasps were audible. Everyone had expected me to choose someone from outside the family. Judge will lead with the support of a strong executive team, I continued. Artie Washington as COO, Pearlie Thompson as CFO, and Judge Martinez as VP of Operations. Together, they'll continue the work we've started, running a business that's both successful and meaningful. Judge stood and walked to the microphone, tears streaming down his face. 2 years ago, I was arrogant, Judge began. I thought I knew better than my mother. I thought modern business practices were more important than old-fashioned values. I was wrong about everything. When Mom took away my position, I was humiliated, Judge continued. Angry, resentful. I felt like she was punishing me unfairly, but she wasn't punishing me, she was teaching me. She made me work as a junior community relations coordinator, Judge said. Do you know what that job entails? Going to neighborhood meetings, listening to people's concerns, building actual relationships with the communities we serve. All the things I'd been too important to do when I was CEO. And somewhere in that process, I remembered why this company exists, Judge said. Not to maximize shareholder value, not to impress Wall Street, but to serve people, to be part of something bigger than ourselves. I'm honored that Mom trusts me to lead again, Judge concluded. But I promise you, I'm not the same leader I was before. I've learned. I've changed. And I will never again forget who built this family. The applause was thunderous. After the ceremony, I slipped away to the original store's back room. The same room where I'd changed Judge's diapers 50 years ago, where Homer and I had stolen quiet moments during our 16-hour workdays, where we'd made the decisions that shaped our future. Royal found me there, sitting on an old stool, looking at pictures on the wall. Mom, you okay? He asked. I'm fine, I said, just remembering. Royal sat down next to me. What are you remembering? The early days, I said. When it was just your father and me, working ourselves to exhaustion, hoping we could make this crazy dream work. Do you miss him? Royal asked. Every day, I admitted. Especially at moments like this. He should be here, Royal. He should get to see what we built, what we almost lost, what we saved. He does see it, Royal said. I believe that, and I think he's proud. Of the company, of you, and maybe even of us finally. Maybe, I said. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Mom, can I ask you something? Royal said. Of course. Why did you give Judge the CEO position? Royal asked. Why not Artie or Pearlie, who have been doing such great work? Why risk putting one of us back in charge? Because this is a family business, I said simply. And that means something. It means we don't just hire the most qualified people, we develop the people we have. We give second chances. We believe in redemption. Judge earned that position, I continued. He worked for it, he humbled himself, he learned, he changed, and yes, there's a risk in promoting him, but calculated risks are how we built this company in the first place. Besides, I added with a smile, I'm not going anywhere. I'll be chairman of the board watching everything. If he starts sliding back into old habits, I'll stop him. Again. Royal laughed. I don't doubt that for a second. The next morning, I arrived at corporate headquarters for the official transition ceremony. The entire company leadership was gathered. My new executive team, the board of directors, key managers, and of course, my family. Judge stood at the front, looking nervous but determined. Before we begin the official transition, I said, I want to read something. I pulled out a letter, yellow with age, the paper fragile. This is a letter Homer wrote to me 45 years ago in 1980 when we were opening our second store, I explained. We'd had a terrible fight about whether to expand. I thought it was too risky. He thought we had to take the chance. This is what he wrote to me after we'd cooled down. I began reading. Dovey, I know you're scared about the new store. I am too. But we didn't build this business by playing it safe. We built it by betting on our values, by trusting in people, by believing that if we do right by others, things will work out. Sometimes I think you worry that I don't see how much you contribute, that people will only remember me as the founder and forget you were right there beside me, making every decision, doing every job, carrying every burden. But I see you, Dovey. I see everything you do. And when we're gone, when this business outlives us, and I believe it will, I hope people remember that we did this together, that there was never a founder and a helper, only two partners who loved each other and loved what they were building. Don't be afraid of the future, my love. We'll face it together just like we've faced everything else. And our children will learn from us. They'll see how to build something meaningful. They'll understand what matters. And if they ever forget, which they might, because children always think they know better than their parents, I trust you'll remind them. You're stronger than you know, Dovey. Stronger than I am in many ways. This family, this business, this legacy, it's in good hands with you. All my love, Homer. By the time I finished reading, everyone in the room was crying. Homer was wrong about one thing, I said, folding the letter carefully. Our children didn't just think they knew better, they convinced themselves we didn't know anything at all. They forgot everything we taught them. But Homer was right about the important thing, I continued. They did eventually learn. It took me ripping control away from them. It took them working their way back up from the bottom. It took 2 years of hard lessons, but they learned. So today, as I hand over daily operations to Judge, I'm fulfilling the promise I made to Homer 45 years ago, I said. I'm ensuring this business outlives us. I'm ensuring it stays true to our values. I'm ensuring our children understand what really matters. I turned to Judge. This is your company now. Don't make me take it back. Judge smiled through his tears. I won't, Mom, I promise. 1 year after Judge took over as CEO, I sat in my office, now a smaller office, befitting my role as chairman, reviewing the company's annual report. The numbers were extraordinary. Sales up 40% from 3 years ago. Profit margins healthy, not because we'd cut costs, but because customers loved us and employees worked harder. Community investment at record levels. Employee satisfaction scores higher than ever. But the numbers weren't what made me proudest. What made me proud was the letter I'd received from Mrs. Octavia Washington, who'd finally retired after 49 years with the company. Dear Miss Dovey, I wanted to write to thank you before I retire, not just for the job, though I'm grateful for that, but for fighting to save this company. 3 years ago, I was ready to quit. The work wasn't the same anymore. The people in charge didn't care about us. Everything felt cold and corporate. But then you came back. You reminded us what this company used to be. And more than that, you showed us it could be that way again. Your son Judge came to my retirement party last week. He knew my name. He knew my grandchildren's names. He gave a speech about how employees like me are the backbone of the company. He actually meant it, Miss Dovey. I could tell. That's because of you. You taught him, retaught him, what matters. You saved this company not just as a business, but as a family. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for reminding us all what we'd almost forgotten. With love and respect, Octavia Washington. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my desk drawer, next to Homer's letter from 45 years ago. This was legacy, not money or buildings or market share, but people remembering that they mattered, families being taken care of, communities being invested in, values being preserved and passed down. That weekend, we held a family reunion at my house. All 3 of my children, their spouses, all 5 grandchildren, and now 7 great-grandchildren, the youngest just 6 months old. We gathered around the same dinner table where I'd confronted my children 3 years ago, where I'd told them they'd forgotten who built this family. But today was different. Today was celebration, not confrontation. Grandma, tell us the story again, my great-grandson Homer, age 7 and named after his great-great-grandfather, asked. About when you took over the company. Again, I laughed. I've told you that story 100 times. But I like it, little Homer insisted. I like the part where everyone gasped. All right. I said, 3 years ago, your great-uncles and great-aunt forgot what was important. They forgot that business isn't just about making money. It's about taking care of people. So what did you do? Homer asked, even though he knew the answer. I reminded them, I said. I took away their fancy positions and made them start over. And you know what? They learned. They became better leaders. And now our company is better than ever. Because you're strong, Homer said matter-of-factly. Because I remembered what my husband and I built this family on, I corrected. Values, principles, the belief that how you treat people matters more than how much money you make. Judge spoke up from across the table. And because you weren't afraid to stand up to us, even though we're your children, even though it was hard, you did what needed to be done. I did what I had to do, I said. I couldn't let you destroy 50 years of work. I couldn't let Homer's legacy be forgotten. I couldn't let our employees be treated like they didn't matter. We're sorry, Mom, Winnie said. I know we've said it before, but we really are. We got so caught up in our own egos that we forgot what really mattered. I know you are, I said, and I've forgiven you. That's the beautiful thing about family. We get second chances, third chances, as many chances as we need to get it right. But we also have to earn those chances, Royal added. You didn't just hand us our positions back, you made us work for it. You made us prove we'd changed. Of course I did, I said. That's what real love looks like. Not letting people get away with bad behavior, holding them accountable, believing they can be better and demanding that they become better. Sterling, my oldest grandchild, raised his glass. A toast to Grandma Dovey, the woman who saved our family business, taught us all what real leadership looks like, and proved that 71 is not too old to kick ass and take names. Everyone laughed and raised their glasses. To Grandma Dovey, they all said. To family, I corrected. To remembering where we came from, to honoring those who built what we have, and to never, ever forgetting what really matters. To family, everyone echoed. Later that evening, after everyone had gone home, I sat on my porch watching the sunset. It was the same porch where I'd sat 50 years ago with Homer, planning our future, dreaming our dreams. My phone rang. It was Judge. Mom, I wanted to call and say thank you, he said. For today, for the past 3 years, for everything. You're welcome, I said. But you earned it, Judge. You did the work. You made the changes. I just gave you the opportunity. You gave us more than an opportunity, Judge said. You gave us our souls back. Winnie, Royal, and I, we'd lost ourselves, lost what mattered, lost connection to the values Dad taught us. You forced us to find those things again. I'm glad, I said simply. I was going over the quarterly reports today, Judge continued. We're on track to hit $200 million in revenue this year. We're expanding to 2 new locations. We're launching a foundation to support small businesses in underserved communities. And we're doing all of it while treating our employees better than ever. That's good, Judge, I said. But you know what makes me proudest? What? Mrs. Washington's retirement letter, I said. The fact that she retired feeling valued, respected, and cared for. That's the real measure of success. I know, Mom, Judge said. I finally understand that, and I promise you I'll never forget it again. After we hung up, I sat for a long time, thinking about the journey we'd been on. 3 years ago, my family had forgotten who built the family business. They'd treated me like I was irrelevant, dismissed my contributions, ignored my warnings. So I'd taken control. I'd shown them I still had power. I'd reminded them who I was and what I'd built. And they'd gasped, shocked that their mother, this elderly woman they'd been sidelining, still had the strength and will to fight. But the gasps weren't the point. The point was what came after. The learning, the growth, the redemption, the rebuilding of relationships and restoration of values. I'd saved the company, but more importantly, I'd saved my family. I'd taught them lessons they desperately needed to learn. I'd shown them what real leadership looked like. And now, as I prepared to step back further, to let them lead, to watch from a distance, to trust that they'd remember what I'd taught them, I felt at peace. Homer and I had built something beautiful. Our children had almost destroyed it. But in the end, they'd learned to preserve it, to honor it, to carry it forward. That was legacy. That was what mattered. Not the money or the market share or the expansion plans, but the values that would outlive all of us. The commitment to treating people well. The belief that business could be both profitable and principled. My whole family had forgotten who built the family, but I'd reminded them. And when I took control, when I showed them I was still powerful and relevant and necessary, yes, they gasped. But then they learned. They changed. They became the leaders their father and I had always hoped they'd be. And that, more than anything else, was the victory I'd been fighting for all along. What an incredible journey. Dovie saved her family business, taught her children lessons they desperately needed, and created a legacy that will last for generations. She didn't just take control, she transformed everyone around her. This story proves that it's never too late to stand up for what you built. Age doesn't mean weakness, experience means wisdom. Real leadership means holding people accountable and believing in redemption. Values matter more than profits, but you can have both. Family businesses succeed when they remember their roots. Women's contributions deserve recognition, not erasure. If this story inspired you, please subscribe to this channel for more empowering stories. Smash that like button. Turn on notifications for new content. Drop a comment. What was your favorite moment in Dovie's journey? Have you ever had to stand up to family to protect something important? Where are you watching from? United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Jamaica, South Africa, Australia, Trinidad, India, Philippines? Let me know. Remember, if you built something, you have the right to protect it. Don't let anyone, not even family, make you feel irrelevant or powerless. Stand up. Take control. Remind them who you are. You might be surprised how much power you still have. Thank you for following Dovie's powerful journey from dismissed matriarch to triumphant leader. May her story inspire you to never forget your own worth and never let others forget it either. Until the next story, stay strong, remember your value, and never stop fighting for what matters.